Take a look at the headlines making the papers in our news review. Please say we're joined by the journalist Janelle Aldred. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. We could have talked about the war in Ukraine and also the war in Iran, because that's been on the headline of every paper for about the past 3 weeks. But we've kind of I think we've managed to pick everything but that, which is quite nice. A bit of variation, and a fab picture on the front of the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah, so the Church of England and more communally the Global Communion has a woman archbishop, and it's the first time that's happened in over 1,000 years. So quite a historic moment. She said, please call me Sarah, but I'm pretty sure people will not call her Sarah. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting moment. And she said some words that I think were really needed about the lack of safeguarding and different things that have happened in the church over the years, and really the commitment to make sure that they are doing what their stated purpose is, which is looking after the poor and the vulnerable. So I think it's a really interesting moment for the church, and I think especially the different changes that she wants to bring in. So yeah, I think it's an interesting and historic moment for women of faith everywhere.
Yeah, the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury, but the first female Archbishop, and about, 30 or so years after women were first ordained in the church. And I listened to the service. I was doing DIY at home, but I listened to the service, and there's that lovely kind of mix of the ancient and the tradition and kind of phraseology that now in 2026 you listen and go, sorry, what?
Yeah.
What is it? But at the same time then the modernity of this, and the fact that in 2026 we now have a woman in this role, a woman also who has bossed her career, because was head nurse as well, you know, overachiever.
Overachiever, and someone who has lived life. And I think that's actually really important for any organisation this time, that you have to have known people, spoken to people, seen people's problems up close, to really show people that you have that compassion and the width and breadth, and don't feel so removed from what's going on. Because, of course, she sits in the House of Lords, you know, and all of those things. And I think it's really important that people understand that you have lived a life that's not just behind a church door. And I think that's really important and helpful.
There's challenges, like you say, of safeguarding that ultimately led her to be in this role following the resignation of her predecessor. Also the challenges of some parts of the wider Anglican Church not being in favour of a female archbishop. But it'd be interesting to see how she goes about tackling those.
Yes, and same-sex, you know, wedding blessings and all the different agendas and things that it seems that she wants to bring in. So I think it's a really interesting time for the Church of England, who have become quite, I would maybe say, peripheral to life in the UK, apart from people who attend church. So let's see if this changes that.
It'll be interesting to see where the attendance does change in terms of that. That's front page of the Daily Telegraph. Just a story that's on the front page of the Eye and then bleeds over into page 9 of the Eye. And the suggestion that kind of Britain's run out of warships and to be able to fulfil our duties. So obviously we've got HMS Dragons headed off to the Mediterranean to protect Cyprus from the Iranian drones and missile attacks that have been in the region. And we then also have NATO commitments. We then also have other operational commitments. And the NATO commitment, we're now having to borrow a warship from the Germans, which will put some of our staff on it to lead the NATO proposals there. And I think the situation in Iran has maybe exposed to the public, at least, that the invincibility of Britain's armed forces isn't quite what it used to be.
I saw the word embarrassment used, which is like a very, very strong word. And I think when you look back over time and when you work in news, you know, and I work more now doing a bit more of this than like the everyday of it, but I can think back to years and months before where there've been the odd story cropping up about our lack of readiness, and everyone's like, well, we live in a time of peace. All of a sudden, things are looking really, really like it's knocking on our actual door in a more real way. And so, yeah, now then the public becomes alive to it's not just some kind of adjacent story of our Navy's not ready, but everything feels fine, to if we spend money today, money spent today is not readiness tomorrow. We're talking about readiness 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6, 10 years down the line, which just shows you how gutted everything has been for such a long time. And it does feel all just very reactionary and not preparing for what could happen.
And you think back to the defence spending review of 2010 that brought about huge cuts following the global recession. And then, you know, the government, I'm sure, and supporters understandably will go, well, look, we've got 2 aircraft carriers. Yeah. The reality is we only have 2 because actually it was going to be more expensive to scrap one of them. The scrapping costs during the building process and cancelling that contract was more expensive than building the ship itself. The government didn't want to build the second one at the time, and ultimately did because it was cheaper than not building it. So, again, kind of indicative of the decision-making processes that 10, 20 years old that now are affecting here and now.
And this is why I think it's so important to have a really strong civil service, because governments do come and go. And so that government that did, severe austerity is not the government that we have now, but it's, now money's funny for a different reason. But it talks to our long-term planning and thinking. We can't think that because it's peaceful today, peace will always stay, and that because there's war today, that it will always be like that either. And so I do think it does put our country in a really... Because half of the war bluster is having stuff, that people know you've got stuff, that if something should happen, we can fight back. So the minute people know, well, actually, we don't have those things, our protection is lower, we can't get places quickly, then that does put us more at risk just for the fact that there's a lack there. So I think it is a massively important issue that we're going to have to throw a bit of strength on to keep us safe.
From cash for ships to crypto for politics.
Yes. So, I think the money around politics has become increasingly contentious over time as we've had more and more foreign interest in our politics and people donating money. So now there is a ban on cryptocurrency being given as a form of donation, and that's really only going to hit at this moment Reform, because they're the only party that takes crypto.
I didn't know you could donate via crypto.
Crypto is one of those things, and I know maybe I should know. It seems just like one of those, still a black box to me. Like, what is going on in there?
What is a meme coin?
What is a meme coin? I just hear about people losing lots of money on NFTs and digital pictures and all. Oh yeah, I know. It feels so retro. Yeah. So that's why I think cryptocurrency. I wonder when most of us are going to be like, is this staying? But the main party hit by this is going to be Reform, because they have had most of their donations, and there's also going to be a limit on how much foreign donors can spend. £100,000. And so they've had £12 million in the past year from a Thailand-based investor. And so it's not even just foreign investors, it's UK investors who live abroad. And so this is going to hit them, but I do think it's necessary that there is way more clarity around who's giving money to political parties and what their interests might be. Why is someone who lives so far away giving them £12 million? That's not for nothing. So I think that is interesting.
And this all kind of originally started about because there was questions over whether Elon Musk was going to make kind of not just a donation, but kind of world-changing donations potentially to political parties, notably Reform. Reform pretty upset about the situation. They kind of say it's a bit of a kind of a witch hunt, maybe they might argue, or maybe use different phraseology, but they kind of argue that they're probably being unfairly targeted. And then the government will say, well, look, no, we're just trying to strengthen democracy. And that all then came as a report came out, more broadly about kind of foreign involvement in UK politics. And it said, look, to have true freedom, you need to stay vigilant the whole time. And
I think that is... You can see all around the world different governments interfering in different, and not just the governments that we're thinking of. The US have been, touted as potentially interfering in UK politics. So you do have to stay vigilant, and I do think no political party should have a problem with being transparent about who gives them money, because they're here to serve us and not to serve themselves. So if you're here to serve us, tell us who gives you cash. There shouldn't be a problem with that.
Just very quickly, we're slightly short on time. I was going to scoot forwards to the fact that the Lion King composer is suing over a joke. This went viral, this kind of joke went viral on social media about the meaning of the opening of The Lion King. And now, $27 million legal suit has been served to the comedian Lebo M, seeking $27 million, in part for damages, in part for profits that the comedian made. It's a classic American story.
I mean, only in America, I think, as Don King, the late Don King would say, that would happen. 27 million for a joke.
And those legal letters were served while the comedian was on set as well. It was classic USA. Jeanette, really good to have you with us. Stick with us here on Sky News. All the day's top stories come up with Sophie and Wolf. You're watching Sky.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?